It had been 5 years since Noah disappeared from my life without a word. 5 long years of wondering why, replaying every memory, searching for any sign of what went wrong. I had spent countless nights lying awake, haunted by the emptiness he left behind. Eventually, I forced myself to move on. I had no choice. And just when I thought I had buried the past for good, he came back. Of all the people, of all the places, Noah is the last person I ever expected to see again, and certainly not moving into the house next door. I was carrying groceries up the front steps when I saw him. At first, I thought my mind was playing tricks on me, but then he turned, and the bag slipped from my hand. Noah. Time hadn't erased the sharp lines of his face or the way his dark eyes seemed to see right through me. But there was something else, something harder about him now. His expression was guarded, his body tense as he carried boxes from the moving truck to the house. He hadn't seen me yet. For a moment, I stood frozen on the sidewalk, too shocked to move. I never thought I'd see him again, not after the way he vanished without any explanation. My pulse raced as I stood there, trying to decide what to do. Part of me wanted to march right up to him, demand answers, make him face what he did. But another part of me, the part still nursing the old wounds, wasn't sure if I could handle it. Just when I was about to turn around and pretend I hadn't seen him, his eyes met mine. The groceries at my feet might as well have been invisible. Noah froze, the box in his hand slipping slightly. His face was unreadable, but I saw the flicker of recognition. For a moment, we just stared at each other, the weight of everything unsaid hanging between us. "Lily," he said quietly, his voice rougher than I remembered. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my composure. "Noah." He set the box down slowly and walked toward me, his expression still guarded. There was tension in the way he moved, like he wasn't sure how to approach me. I wasn't sure how to react either. My heart was a whirlwind of anger, confusion, and something else. Something I didn't want to admit was still there. "I didn't know," he hesitated, rubbing the back of his neck. "I didn't know you were still living here." "Why would you?" I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "You left." His face tightened at that, but he didn't respond. He just stood there, awkward and uncomfortable, like he wanted to say more but couldn't find the words. It was infuriating. After everything, he was still hiding something. "What are you doing here, Noah?" I demanded, crossing my arms to hide the tremble in my hands. "Why now? Why move into the house next door, of all places?" "It's complicated," he said, his eyes shifting to the ground. "Complicated?" I scoffed. "That's the same thing you said when you left. I deserve more than that." He looked up at me, his eyes dark and serious. "You're right. You do. But I can't explain it. Not right now." My heart raced with a mix of anger and frustration. It was like I was back in that same place 5 years ago, waiting for answers that never came. I had moved on, built a life without him. But here he was, stirring up old wounds. "You can't just show up and expect me to be okay with this," I said, my voice rising. "You left without a word, and now you're back, and I'm supposed to just accept it?" Noah stepped closer, his voice low. "I didn't want this to happen. I didn't plan to be your neighbor. But there are things you don't know, Lily. Things I can't tell you." I shook my head, my chest tight with emotion. "Then why come back at all?" His jaw clenched, and for a moment, I saw something flicker in his eyes, something close to fear, because I had no other choice. The words hung in the air between us, heavy with meaning. I wanted to press him, to make him explain what he meant, but there was something in his expression that stopped me. He looked afraid. Noah had always been calm, in control, but this was different. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice softer now, despite the storm brewing inside me. "I can't talk about it," he said quietly, glancing around as if someone might be watching. "Not here. Not now." The tension between us was suffocating. I wanted to demand more, to force him to tell me what was really going on. But before I could say anything, Noah stepped back. "I'm sorry, Lily," he said, his voice tight. "I didn't want to bring you into this." "Bring me into what?" I asked, but he was already turning away. "I'll explain when I can," he muttered, heading back to the moving truck. "But for now, please, just stay away." I stood there, my heart pounding as I watched him walk away, disappearing into the house next door like nothing had happened. Stay away? That's what he thought he could say after 5 years. Noah was hiding something, and it wasn't just about why he left. There was a darkness around him now, something he wasn't telling me. Whatever it was, I knew one thing for certain. It was more dangerous than I ever imagined. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face. The way he looked at me, the tension in his voice. It wasn't just guilt. It was fear. Real, deep fear. I couldn't stop wondering what he was hiding. Why did he disappear without a trace, only to come back now? What had happened to him in the time he was gone? And why was he so afraid? I tossed and turned in bed, my thoughts racing, until finally, I gave in and got up. I pulled open the blinds and stared out the window at Noah's house, now dark and silent. There was no sign of him, no movement, just the empty street between us, as if the years hadn't passed and nothing had changed. But everything had changed. As I stood there, a strange sensation crept over me, like I was being watched. I glanced down the street, but it was empty. The feeling lingered, unsettling and cold. I turned away from the window, a chill running down my spine. Noah had warned me to stay away. But now, more than ever, I needed answers. And I had a feeling the truth would be far worse than I could ever imagine. Have you ever had someone from your past return with secrets you weren't ready to uncover? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. Lily's life is about to be turned upside down, and the danger is just beginning. The next few days were a blur of unanswered questions and uneasy tension. Noah had disappeared again, but this time, he was only a few steps away, just behind that wall separating our houses. I could feel his presence every time I looked out my window, even though I hadn't seen him since that strange encounter in the driveway. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The fear in his eyes haunted me, and the cryptic warning to stay away only made my curiosity burn stronger. What had happened to him in the 5 years he'd been gone? What could be so dangerous that he wouldn't, or couldn't, tell me? The rational part of me told me to take his advice and let it go. But after everything, I couldn't. I needed answers. One evening, as I sat on my porch with a book I couldn't focus on, I spotted Noah across the street. He was walking fast, his shoulders hunched like he was trying to disappear into his jacket. His eyes darted nervously around the quiet neighborhood, and for a moment, I swore I saw him glance back at my house. I made a split-second decision. Before I could stop myself, I grabbed my coat and followed him. I wasn't sure what I expected, but as I trailed him down the block, a sick feeling twisted in my stomach. What was I even doing? Spying on him like this made me feel ridiculous, but I couldn't let go of the nagging feeling that something was seriously wrong. Noah led me to a small park at the edge of town, where he slowed his pace, looking around cautiously before sitting on a bench. I ducked behind a tree, my heart racing, but something about his body language told me he wasn't here for a quiet evening stroll. Suddenly, a man appeared from the shadows. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and his expression was cold, almost menacing. He walked right up to Noah, towering over him. They started talking, their voices too low for me to hear, but the tension between them was clear. My heart pounded in my chest as I crouched lower behind the tree. Noah's body language had changed. He was tense, stiff, like he was preparing for a fight. The other man leaned in closer, pointing a finger at Noah's chest, and I saw Noah flinch. Then, as quickly as the conversation had started, the man shoved something into Noah's hands and walked away, disappearing into the night. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Noah sat there for a moment, his face pale, staring at whatever the man had given him. Then he stood up abruptly, stuffing the object into his jacket, and headed back toward the street. I scrambled to my feet, my mind racing with questions. What had I just witnessed? Who was that man? What did he give Noah? My head spun with possibilities, each one worse than the last. I was about to step out of the shadows when I saw Noah's eyes dart around again. He looked over his shoulder, as if he knew he was being watched, and for a terrifying second, I thought he had seen me. But he kept walking, disappearing into the darkness. I stood frozen, my heart pounding in my ears. Whatever Noah was involved in, it was dangerous, more dangerous than I'd imagined. Later that night, I sat in my living room, unable to calm the frantic rhythm of my thoughts. Every piece of the puzzle seemed to be falling into place, but it didn't paint a clear picture. Instead, it made everything worse. Noah wasn't just back to reconnect with an old neighborhood. He was hiding from something or someone, and I had a sinking feeling I knew exactly who. Just as I was about to head to bed, there was a knock on my door. I froze, my hand on the banister, and for a second, I considered not answering it. But something in the air told me that whoever was on the other side wasn't going to go away. I opened the door, and there he was, Noah, standing in the dim porch light, his face pale, eyes shadowed with exhaustion. He looked worse than the last time I saw him, like he hadn't slept in days. His jacket was pulled tightly around him, but I could still see the tension in his shoulders. "We need to talk," he said, his voice rough and urgent. I stared at him for a moment, the words stuck in my throat. There were a million things I wanted to say, demands, accusations, questions, but I couldn't find any of them. All I could manage was a shaky nod. "Come in." Noah stepped inside, his movements stiff, like he was ready to bolt at any moment. I led him into the living room, and he sat down on the edge of the couch, his hands restless on his knees. I could feel the weight of the conversation pressing down on both of us. "I followed you," I said, breaking the silence, my voice steadier than I felt. "Tonight, I saw you with that man." Noah's eyes snapped up to mine, and for a second, panic flickered across his face. "Lily, you shouldn't have." "Who was he?" I interrupted, crossing my arms. "What's going on, Noah?" He looked away, his jaw clenched. "I didn't want to drag you into this." "Too late," I said, my voice sharp. "I'm already in it. Now tell me the truth." Noah exhaled slowly, leaning back against the couch. His eyes were dark and haunted, and when he spoke, his voice was low, like he was finally giving in to the weight of the secret he had been carrying. "I got involved with the wrong people," he said quietly, his hands clenched into fists. 5 years ago, I was working for a company. On the surface, it looked legitimate, but it wasn't. They were running all kinds of illegal operations behind the scenes. Money laundering, trafficking, you name it. I found out too much. I stared at him, my heart pounding. "And they came after you?" Noah nodded grimly. "I was a threat. I had access to sensitive information that could bring the whole operation down. When I tried to walk away, they gave me a choice: disappear or end up dead." "So you disappeared," I whispered, the weight of his words settling over me. "I thought I was protecting you by leaving," he said, his voice tight with guilt. "If they knew we were together, they would have come after you too." Anger flared inside me. "And now you've come back? Why, Noah? Why now?" "I thought I was safe," he admitted, running a hand through his hair. "I thought if I laid low, stayed off their radar, they wouldn't find me. But I was wrong. They found me again, and they're watching me. That man you saw tonight, he's one of their enforcers. They want something from me, something I still have. And if I don't give it to them—" I swallowed hard, my stomach twisting in fear. "What do they want?" Noah hesitated, his eyes filled with guilt and fear. "I have evidence. A flash drive with everything: emails, transactions, details that could take them down. They've been hunting me for years, trying to get it back. I stared at him, the realization hitting me like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just about our past. It wasn't just about him leaving me. This was about survival, his and now, terrifyingly, mine. You need to leave, Noah said urgently, standing up. You're in danger now, Lily. They'll come after you, too, if they think you know anything. My heart raced, my mind spinning with fear. Noah, No, he cut me off, his voice filled with desperation. I never should have come back. You have to leave town. Tonight. I stood there, frozen in place, staring at the man who had once been my entire world. The man who had vanished without a trace, and then returned with a secret that could destroy us both. And now, I had to decide whether to run, or to stay and face the danger head-on. What would you do if someone from your past came back with a secret that put your life at risk? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. Lily's life is spiraling out of control, and things are about to get much worse. I couldn't sleep that night. Noah's warning echoed in my mind, but I couldn't just pack up and leave. My life was here. My job, my friends, my home. I couldn't abandon everything on a moment's notice, even though the danger was very real. But I also couldn't deny that I was in over my head. I spent hours pacing the floor, trying to make sense of everything. The man I had loved, the man who had broken my heart, was now telling me to run because I was in danger. And the terrifying thing was, I believed him. He wasn't just hiding from his past. He was being hunted by people who wouldn't stop until they got what they wanted. A flash drive. The evidence that could destroy them. By morning, I had convinced myself to confront Noah again. I needed more answers, and I wasn't going to leave until I had them. If he thought I was in danger, I had a right to know what was really going on. I walked over to his house, my heart pounding with each step. I didn't even know what I was going to say, just that I couldn't let things end the way they had last night. I knocked on the door, bracing myself for the storm that was bound to follow. Noah opened the door after a few seconds, his expression grim and worn. He looked like he hadn't slept either. The guilt was still there, hanging over him like a shadow. I told you. I'm not leaving, I interrupted, stepping past him into the house. You can't expect me to just run without knowing the full story. If I'm in danger, I deserve to know why. Noah closed the door behind me, running a hand through his hair in frustration. Lily, I told you everything I could. This isn't safe for you. I don't care. I snapped, my voice shaking. You brought this into my life the moment you came back. So stop trying to protect me by pushing me away. I want to know what's going on. He sighed heavily, sitting down on the edge of the couch, his shoulders slumped. For a long moment, he said nothing, and I could see the conflict raging inside him. Then, finally, he spoke. I never wanted you involved in this, he said quietly. But you're right. You deserve to know the truth. I sat down across from him, waiting. My heart pounded, and I couldn't tell if it was from fear or something else. Something I didn't want to admit was still there between us. Noah rubbed his hands together, staring at the floor as he spoke. After I left, I thought I could stay off their radar. I kept moving, kept a low profile. But they've got people everywhere. Every time I settled down, someone would find me. At first, they were just watching, sending messages. Then it got more serious. Threats, close calls. They think I'm going to use the evidence to expose them. What's on the flash drive? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Everything, Noah said, his eyes dark with the weight of it. Details of their illegal deals, names of everyone involved, including high-level officials. If that information gets out, the whole operation collapses. That's why they're hunting me, to keep me quiet. My stomach churned. This was worse than I had imagined. Noah wasn't just a loose end. They were chasing him because he held the key to their destruction. And now, by some twisted fate, I was caught in the middle. Why don't you just give them what they want? I asked, my voice trembling. Give them the flash drive and end this. Noah shook his head. If I give it to them, they'll kill me and anyone who knows anything. The moment they have the drive, we're both dead. It's my only leverage. I felt the blood drain from my face. So what do we do? He looked at me, his expression filled with guilt. We have to expose them. It's the only way. Once the information is out in the open, they won't be able to cover it up. But until then, we're not safe. The room felt like it was closing in on me. This wasn't just about Noah's past. It wasn't just about us. This was about survival, about taking down a criminal syndicate before they took us down first. As the day dragged on, the unease settled deeper into my bones. Noah had laid everything out for me, but now we had to figure out what came next. He was right. We couldn't keep running, but going up against these people seemed like an impossible task. We spent hours in his living room, poring over maps, discussing possible plans. Noah insisted we had to be smart about it. The syndicate had connections everywhere, including law enforcement, so going to the police wasn't an option. We had to be careful, methodical. If we release the evidence ourselves, Noah explained, they'll see it coming and find us before we can disappear. I nodded, trying to stay focused despite the overwhelming fear that gnawed at me. Then we need someone who can help us. Someone they can't easily reach. There's a journalist I know, Noah said, his voice steady. She's been investigating this kind of corruption for years. If we can get the files to her, she'll know what to do. She can expose everything. Can you trust her? I asked, not hiding my skepticism. She's the best shot we've got, Noah replied. She's taken down powerful people before. The idea of putting our lives in the hands of a stranger made me uneasy, but I knew he was right. We couldn't do this alone. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. It was like the walls had eyes, like every shadow hid a threat. My mind raced with images of the syndicate, faceless men waiting in the dark, tracking my every move. I kept telling myself it was just paranoia, but the dread lingered. And then, it happened. The sound of glass breaking downstairs jolted me out of bed, my heart leaping into my throat. I froze, listening to the silence that followed. My mind screamed at me to run, to hide, but my feet wouldn't move. Someone was in the house. I grabbed my phone and dialed Noah's number with shaking hands, whispering into the receiver as quietly as I could. Noah, someone's here. There was a pause, and then his voice, calm but urgent. Lock yourself in the bathroom. Now. I did as he said, moving as quietly as possible. The adrenaline kicked in, my mind racing as I locked the bathroom door and backed into the corner, clutching the phone like a lifeline. I'm coming, Noah said. Don't move. I sat there, my breath coming in shallow gasps, listening to the faint sounds coming from downstairs, footsteps, the creak of floorboards. I prayed they wouldn't come upstairs. I prayed Noah would get here before anything worse could happen. Then, I heard it, the sound of the front door being kicked open, more footsteps, muffled voices, and then silence. My heart pounded in my ears as I waited, terrified of what I would find when I opened that door. But then, Noah's voice came through the phone again, soft and reassuring. It's me. I'm here. I slowly unlocked the door and stepped out into the hallway. Noah stood at the bottom of the stairs, his face pale, a tightness in his jaw. They're gone, he said, his voice low. But they were looking for something. The words sent a chill down my spine. I didn't have to ask what they were looking for. It was obvious. The flash drive. The evidence that could destroy them. We don't have time, Noah said, his eyes dark with urgency. We need to leave. Now. We packed in a blur, throwing essentials into bags, our every movement fueled by fear and adrenaline. There was no time to think, no time to plan. We had to disappear before they came back. Where are we going? I asked as we rushed out the door, my heart racing. To meet the journalist, Noah said, his voice tense. She's waiting for us. Once we get the evidence to her, it'll be out of our hands. I nodded, though my mind was still spinning. This was real. We were being hunted by people who would stop at nothing to get what they wanted. And the only thing standing between them and us was a flash drive and a journalist we had never met. As we drove into the night, I couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was still ahead of us. The syndicate was closing in, and now we had nowhere left to hide. What would you do if your home was no longer safe and your life was on the line? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. Lily and Noah are about to face the ultimate danger, and the stakes have never been higher. The highway stretched out before us, dark and empty. Noah drove fast, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. I sat beside him, heart racing, every nerve on edge. The silence between us felt like the calm before a storm, one we both knew was coming. The plan was simple: meet the journalist, hand over the flash drive, and get out before the syndicate found us. But nothing about this situation felt simple. The men who had broken into my house weren't going to stop until they had the drive, and they were getting closer with every minute that passed. "We'll be safe once we meet her," Noah said, his voice tense, as though he was trying to convince himself. "She knows what to do. She's dealt with these kinds of people before." I nodded, but the fear in my chest didn't budge. What if they find us before we get there? Noah's jaw tightened. "We'll figure it out." I glanced at him, seeing the strain etched into his face. He had been carrying this weight for so long, running from shadows, from danger, and now we were running together. I didn't know what the future held for us, if we even had a future, but right now we were in this together. The meeting point was a rundown diner on the outskirts of town. The neon sign flickered faintly in the night, casting a dim glow over the empty parking lot. It was a strange place to hand over evidence that could take down an entire criminal organization, but I suppose that was the point. No one would think to look here. We pulled into the lot, parking in the shadows near the edge. Noah's eyes scanned the area as he cut the engine, his body tense and alert. "There," he said, nodding toward a car parked on the other side of the lot. "That's her." A woman was sitting inside, her face barely visible through the windshield. She was on her phone, her expression serious, her fingers drumming nervously on the steering wheel. Noah took a deep breath, grabbing the flash drive from his jacket pocket. "Once she has this, it's out of our hands. We just need to disappear after that." I nodded, my stomach twisting with nerves. "And what happens if she can't publish it?" "She will," Noah said firmly. "She has connections. She knows how to protect herself." His confidence didn't ease my anxiety, but we had no choice. This was the only option we had left. We stepped out of the car and walked toward the journalist. The night was eerily quiet, the only sound the crunch of gravel under our feet. As we approached, she rolled down the window, eyeing us cautiously. "You're Noah?" she asked, her voice low and clipped. Noah nodded. "And you're Kate?" "That's right," she replied, glancing around nervously. "Do you have it?" Noah pulled out the flash drive, holding it up. "It's all here. Everything you need to expose them." Kate took the drive, slipping it into her pocket. "I'll get this to my contacts. Once it's out, there's no going back. You understand that, right?" "We understand," Noah said. Before Kate could respond, the roar of an engine cut through the silence. My heart stopped. Headlights appeared on the horizon, speeding toward us. "They found us," Noah muttered, his voice thick with dread. "We have to go." Kate's eyes widened, and she cursed under her breath. "I'll handle this. Get out of here now." Noah grabbed my arm, pulling me back toward the car as the other vehicle screeched into the parking lot. The SUV we had been running from slammed to a stop, its headlights blinding as three men climbed out, their faces cold and menacing. One of them, the same man I'd seen meeting Noah in the park, locked eyes with us. His lips curled into a dangerous smile. "Going somewhere, Noah?" he called out, his voice dripping with malice. We told you this would only end one way. Noah pushed me toward the car, his voice urgent. Get in. Now. But before we could move, the man pulled out a gun, aiming it directly at us. I froze, my heart pounding in my ears. Not so fast, he said, his voice chillingly calm. We're going to need that drive back. Noah, what do we do? I whispered, my voice trembling. Noah's eyes were locked on the man, his body tense, ready for a fight. Stay behind me. The enforcers started walking toward us, their footsteps slow and deliberate. The man in the lead, guns still trained on us, seemed almost amused by the situation. He thought he had us cornered. But before he could take another step, a shot rang out. For a second, I thought the man had fired at us, but then I saw him stagger, clutching his arm in pain. Kate had fired a shot from her car, her gun trained on the enforcers. Get down, she shouted. Noah pulled me behind the car as chaos erupted. The men ducked for cover, returning fire, and the sound of gunshots filled the night. My heart raced, panic surging through me as I crouched beside Noah, my hands shaking. We have to go, I shouted over the noise. Not yet, Noah replied, his eyes scanning the scene. Kate fired again, hitting another of the men, but they were relentless. One of them circled around the car, closing in on us. I could barely think, my mind spinning with fear. But just as the man raised his gun to fire, Noah lunged forward, tackling him to the ground. They struggled, fists flying, but Noah's desperation won out. He knocked the gun from the man's hand, sending it skidding across the gravel. Noah! I screamed, my voice filled with terror. He pinned the man down, his face a mask of determination. Get to the car. I didn't hesitate. I ran to the driver's side, throwing open the door and starting the engine. Noah scrambled up and raced toward me, leaving the man stunned on the ground. Kate was still holding off the other enforcers, but I knew we didn't have much time. Noah jumped into the passenger seat, and I floored the gas, tires screeching as we sped out of the lot. We didn't stop driving for hours. The adrenaline surged through me, my hands gripping the wheel so tightly I thought my fingers might break. Noah sat beside me, breathing heavily, bruised and battered from the fight. But we were alive. We did it, he said quietly, his voice hoarse. We got out. I nodded, but I couldn't shake the fear that still gripped me. We had escaped for now, but what came next? The syndicate wouldn't just give up. Even with the evidence in Kate's hands, there would be fallout. There would be consequences. Where do we go now? I asked, my voice trembling. We disappear, Noah said, his eyes dark with resolve. We lay low, wait for the story to break. Once the syndicate is exposed, they'll be too busy saving themselves to come after us. And if they don't? I whispered, the fear gnawing at me. Noah reached for my hand, his grip firm, reassuring. Then we keep running. But we'll be okay, Lily. We'll survive this. I looked at him, my heart swelling with a mix of fear and something else, something stronger. Despite everything, despite the danger, I knew I wasn't alone in this anymore. Noah and I were in this together, and no matter what came next, we would face it side by side. A week later, the story broke. The syndicate's crimes were exposed, the arrests began, and the media firestorm erupted. But Noah and I stayed far from the chaos, hidden away in a small town where no one knew us, waiting for the dust to settle. The danger wasn't over, not entirely. There were still pieces of the syndicate out there, still people who might want revenge. But for now, we had survived. And as I looked over at Noah, sitting beside me in the quiet of our new life, I realized something else. I wasn't just running from my past anymore. I was building a future with him. Would you risk everything for a chance to rebuild your life with someone from your past? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. Lily and Noah's story may have reached a turning point, but the real adventure is just beginning.